That was
Thank
it.
you.
That's all I had.
I'm so grateful for that because I literally, before we started, I'm like, remember to record, remember to record. And then I forgot to record. And I usually write like a little note, and I've been horrible about it with this group. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So for anyone watching this recording, we just talked about demoing. You're going to demo more, and you're going to mirror rather than turn your back, and you're going to take more time overall. With your sequence, which means less poses. But then, like Christian was saying, then you get more time with those poses. So here's my overarching big things, and then we'll dissect the sequence a little bit. I always want to let them know they can ask questions. So many beginners come in and they have this idea of yogis and like so serious and like, don't talk, don't smile, don't have fun. This is deadly serious business. And no, that's a harmful attitude, because then that's when people don't ask questions and they get hurt because they don't understand what you're saying. So encourage questions always, and really take the time to do that. I think that's nice in any class, but especially with beginners. Pick your battles. And what I mean by that is, if you try to get every student into perfect alignment in a pose, you're going to spend your whole class on one pose. And even by the end of it, they're not going to have it because it just takes time to get that proprioception and to get the brain working with the body to make the basic shapes we're going for. So what you do want to focus on is safety. So for instance, in Warrior Two, something you see a lot is that front knee, instead of being, at this nice angle over the ankle, pretend this is an ankle and this is a knee, we see this a lot, right? Which I talked about with you when we did our Sun B day. That is a priority. If someone's hand is like this, that's not a priority. And in fact, if I spend too much time getting their hands right, they usually lose all the work we just did on the foundation and the legs. So there are things you just have to let go. And along with that, Ujjayi breath. I teach it, and I'll teach it very specifically, and we'll try to get 2 or 3 good Ujjayi breaths going. But it's in your own practice, it's not like you got it after 3 class. If you did, that's awesome. Some people do, but it's rare. Usually it takes almost a year of pretty consistent practice for someone to be like, oh my goodness, I get it. This is why we do Ujjayi breath, and I've been doing it like the whole hour. So you still want to model it so that they know, like, oh, it's audible, and she means it, or he means it, or they mean it when they say, I want to hear it. But it just takes them a while to get, they're so busy thinking about what's happening. You kind of remember what it was like, right? Like figuring out what's happening in your body when you're a beginner takes about all the brain power you have. So I do teach Ujjayi, but I don't hold tightly to expecting them to do it. Yeah, so they just have to learn some things on their own through trial and error. And again, just safety first, safety first, safety first. The rest of the stuff doesn't matter. And part of that safety is emotional safety. So really making sure you're setting them up, you're talking to them, you're letting them know anything that isn't right for you, don't do. Because, and Flo, was it you that said this, that they're so literal and they take everything so, they really think if you say heels to the ground in your down dog, that if they're not doing that it's wrong. And so we really need to watch our cueing and our attitude and really let them know not every pose is going to be right for everybody, and not every pose is going to look the same in everybody, and that variations are awesome. And to really, I think that's one of the biggest parts of safety, is creating that like safe container emotionally for them to have a good experience. Okay, let's talk cues. Let's take a poll. And for those of you, I know we've had this before, and I'm kind of this way where you're like, I don't want to get something wrong. You can either vote for what you really think or the opposite of what you think. And then that way we don't know if you're wrong or right, because you might have voted for the opposite of what you really think. So either vote for what you really think or the opposite of what you really think. I'm going to ask first if you think we cue more or cue less. So who thinks we cue more with beginners? Okay, who thinks we cue less? Okay, and see, this way everyone's right because you might have, we don't know what you were really voting for. We think we're going to cue more. You actually give fewer cues, but probably more often. Okay, so if you get too specific with your cues, you will overwhelm them. So stick with those really foundational safety cues and just create a safe pose. It takes more talking, it takes more demoing, but you're getting less detailed. So in a way, you do cue more, but you also cue less because it's less detailed. All right, what about adjusting? Same thing. First, we'll do who thinks we adjust more and who thinks we adjust less. So who thinks we adjust beginners more? Okay, who thinks less? Okay. I adjust less. This is personal preference. What I always do, of course, we have our opt out, and we continue to say if something's not right for you, let me know. But also, if you are circling around someone, you know, like a shark, and changing everything they do, it can feel like a criticism. It's still important for them, especially when we're in a world where we're giving hands-on assists, that they know that this is part of it and that it's not a criticism. So we can say it's not a criticism. And we can also, like, what I like to do is make sure I am adjusting people who to a beginner look like they're really advanced. Yeah, stick to safety adjustments. Yeah, I would safety and real easy basic ones. So it's not necessarily safety to pull someone's shoulders down into Tadasana, but it feels really good. And it's not a deep one. It's an easy one where they're just like, oh, Amber's just putting her hands on me to help me relax my shoulders. It's not a criticism. And like sorry, I kind of got off track, but I like to make sure that the newer students see me adjusting students who have clearly been practicing for longer, so that they see it's something that everyone can benefit from. It's not a criticism. So it's not just saying it's not a criticism, it's really showing that. And again, I would pick safety first, or again, just those real kind of basic ones where they can just get used to like a little bit of touch. If I'm going to adjust in Shavasana, I let them know and I give them an opt out of like, put your hand on your stomach. Here's what I'll be doing, because Shavasana and child's pose, if they're not expecting it and all of a sudden your hands are on them, they will fly off the floor. Like, it is like, what is going on? So I do, if I'm going to put my hands on anyone in those, I really let them know. And again, this is where we really, in adjusting, we want to do this so they hear us coming. I wrote demo more. I think those are kind of the big picture ideas. Before we get into our sequence, what questions or what other thoughts or comments do you have about teaching to beginners in general? Yeah, Belle.
I liked the rubbing your hands together to let them know that you're coming. I had one class where it was like a hot yoga class, and for Shavasana, they had like a little bowl of cool water with like essential oils and a rag. And they'd have us set it next to us. So then when it was our turn to be adjusted, you would hear them like wring out the rag, and then you would get like the rag like on your forehead and stuff like that. But It's definitely a good reminder because I didn't even think about how fast I would jump off of the mat if I wasn't expecting someone to be coming
Yeah,
over to me.
it's scary. I mean, it can happen even when you know the teach, you know, you've done yoga for years, but then if it's like your first or your second class, yeah, so that's a good thing to do. Um, anything else? Yeah, Flo.
Um, yeah, and I remember like in my early classes, like the teacher would, like I might hear them, but there's just a lot of like a little bit of noise in the class. It was such a large class, and they would just like come and kind of lightly touch you on the forearm, just so that you know they were there, and then you could shoo them away, or you're okay with it. You wouldn't do anything. So then they would do the adjustment.
Yeah, that's a nice way to just a gentle kind of, hey, I'm here. And Jenny wrote also about the spray. I'll just bring up, I was not going to say anything, but I have to. As someone who is literally very, very, very allergic to lavender, like I have to have an EpiPen in case I have some severe allergies. I don't like even being yeah, I could opt out of having my face sprayed with lavender, but the person next to me is getting it and the person down the way. So I'm not a fan of essential oils, period, personally, because there's too many people with allergies. But that said, if they know in advance, and especially if it's like friends or family and you know, and you want to make it this really special experience, it can be beautiful and wonderful. You just want to make sure you can talk to them in advance, like, are there allergies? Because that's something we don't usually talk about on our waivers either. I just realized, and part of that's because of me, because I'm just like, nope, we're not having any. Any other big picture type things? Yeah, Christian.
I just wanted to reinforce the letting them kind of learn like smaller things on their own, because like even if you like sculpt them into perfect form, it doesn't mean they have any understanding of what is right or wrong about it. So
Yes, totally, 100%. Yeah, you said it perfectly. And that is the big thing that beginning teachers tend to stumble on. When I've had teachers do internships with me, it's really hard to let go of that, and to get caught in these, and you don't even, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my goodness, I just spent all this time on something that ultimately isn't important and is probably kind of confusing at this point. All right, shall we move into the sequence? Okay. I'm just enjoying being here with you all so much. This group's great. Does anyone know where Diana is today? Is she the only one missing? Trying to see who else. Yeah.
She is in Phoenix for her daughter's soccer tournament. So she's been kind of in and out, listening but she's been traveling kind of around.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm so extra glad then that Max had me record. Because I was even thinking she's one of my mentees and I was like, oh, she's not here, and I didn't record. Okay. Here are the things. Here's how I think it helps to look at a sequence, especially when you're first learning and you're a newer teacher, is to take your basic sequence and for each series, each section, so like integration, Sun A, Sun B, so forth, think about, in general, you're keeping those things because it's a solid sequence. You're going to get the 5, well, or depending on how it's broken out, the movements of the spine. You're going to get into the hips. You're going to get chest openers, forward folds, all of these things happening. So it's good to kind of start with the sequence, but to, for each series, ask yourself a few questions. So let me give you these questions, because this is where just the analysis and critical thinking really comes in. For each section, ask yourself, think about changing the length of poses. So would you change how long students are in certain poses? That's one thing you can look at. Another thing to look at is modifications. So what poses would you keep but change? Offer up a different variation. And for example, like revolved crescent. Well, you could certainly teach it to beginners, but would you teach it with the knee down on the ground or the knee lifted? Kind of depends on your group, but it certainly can be taught and can be great with the knee on the ground. Let me see, what are my other questions I have for you here? What would you cut? So you're not going to have time for all the poses or even close. And it might be that you cut certain poses out completely. If you do so, you want to ask yourself, go back to that why. Why do we do this pose? And am I still getting that somewhere else? For instance, if I'm going to cut extended side angle out of my Sun B, I go, okay, well, the lower body, I'm getting through Warrior Two still. I'm still doing, like, say I do inhale, Warrior Two, exhale, hold, inhale, reverse warrior, and exhale to the mat. Because extended side angle can just be a tricky one to teach. But am I getting that lateral movement of the spine anywhere else? Well, if I keep triangle, I am. So I can get rid of extended side angle. Or if I cut triangle, then what am I losing? Well, lateral extension. Well, if I have extended side angle, I've got that. What's happening with lower body? Well, there's an inner thigh stretch. If I have wide-legged forward fold, I'm good. So just kind of, that I think is maybe the trickiest part, because you're going to have to cut things, but you're going to have to cut them in a way that's smart, right? Recognizing everything serves a purpose. And so if I'm cutting it, is the spine still moving in all directions? Am I still getting a well-balanced full spectrum yoga class? The other thing to think about cutting when we're talking about the category of cutting is not just individual poses, but numbers of times we do things. Do we need 3 rounds on each side of Sun B? I would argue no. I like to teach Sun B, one time hold it and then do it again, flow it. Not always, sometimes I do 3, but at this point we've done several Sun A's. They're starting to get tired and losing focus mentally too. So I usually cut out a round of Sun B, not always, but there are places. Well, what's a big thing we could cut out throughout the whole series here and there? What's something we do a lot of that we could cut out? Katie, I got it. Half series. Yeah, Belle. Yeah. I mean, do we need 10,000 half series with beginners? I'm about trying to teach some muscle memory stuff, but with good form, and not like beating a dead horse, which is horrible. Why is the horse dead? Why are we beating it? Okay. And then, okay, so that category was cut. What are you going to cut? It could be poses. It could be whole sections that are repeated. And then what are you going to swap? And this could almost be like with your variations, but here's what I mean by this. I think half pigeon is torture to teach to beginners. It takes so much time to make it safe, and it's so you get the blocks and you get it. Just for me, I'm like, time wise, unless I'm really like, that's almost like my peak pose and I'm really dedicated to that pose, that's not my favorite place to spend my time. And so instead of doing a variation of it, I'm going to go, okay, the main thing I'm working on with half pigeon is getting that external rotation of the front hip. What's another pose that could do that that's a little easier? Does anyone have any ideas? Yeah, Katie.
A seated or laying down figure 4.
Yeah, that's one I use quite a bit with beginners, and it's such a gentle hip opener. It's a great one. It's super accessible. Corey, did you have one that you wanted to add?
It was the same. That was the one that I do.
It's a great one. And honestly, I don't know. I can't think of another one that would be quite as good in that regard. Not that there aren't, I'm sure, but it's just a great one. And it is accessible. Now, if we're teaching half pigeon upright, we're getting a stretch through, like say the right leg's up front, the left leg's behind you. We are getting a stretch in the right hip, but we're also getting a stretch at the front, the hip flexor of the left hip, right? When we're upright. When we fold, we don't get that anymore. If we were teaching it that way, we just want to make sure we still have some kind of lunge or crescent, because crescent will also get that. Yeah, lizard lunge. Although I will say lizard lunge, so lizard lunge, you can get more of that hip flexor stretch, but the front hip externally rotating can be really hard for beginners. Not always, but a lot of times they need blocks under their hands. So it just takes some setup to really get that one. But yeah, that can be certainly another one where we can get that external rotation. Although a lot of people can't come onto the knife edge. So you just have to play with it a little. So you're thinking, so these are your 4 categories. Actually, who can sum them up for me, because I'm tired of my own voice? Who will tell me the 4 categories I just gave you to think about? Who's got one of them? Okay, Belle, what's one of them?
Think about changing the length of the poses. How long are the postures?
Thank you. What's next? Oh, Jenny just wrote them in. Yep. Length of pose modifications, what to cut. And then the fourth one is what to swap. So similar to modification, but we're not giving a variation of the same pose. We're just cutting that pose and putting one in its place. Whereas when we just cut them, we're making sure we're getting the same idea elsewhere. How does this sit with you? Does it make sense? Do you have questions about it? Is there anything I'm missing? Okay. Let's practice with it a little.
Corey had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Corey. I didn't see that. Thank you.
Okay, I was just gonna say one of the other ones is to really, because they're not maybe as aware of their body, is to really make sure to ask about injuries or tightness or that kind of a thing, and you can kind of modify around that. So that was just what I was thinking.
Yeah, thank you. That's a big picture thing. And like at our studio, we do that right at the beginning when we're taking waivers, and we're looking at injuries, things like that. But it is an important discussion to have when they're coming in. So thank you. Yeah, that's key. That's really important. Anything else? Cool. Okay. I'm so glad you got that, Corey. That's really important. All right, here's what we'll do. Let's talk about, we'll just see kind of where we get. So you're through Utkatasana with your posture clinics, correct? As of yesterday? Yeah, okay. Yeah, Belle, and agreed. And that's kind of what I said at the beginning. It's just so important to emphasize safety, that you don't have to do everything I'm saying. You need to do what's right in your body. Like, and coming back to it again and again and again and again, because it's just a point that they'll take in at the beginning, and then we all do it. We get to a point where we're like, oh, I have to do exactly what the teacher's saying. No, you don't. And you don't have to do what the person on the mat next to you is doing either. Oh, and I would mention one other thing, just as an overall principle, that when I was doing my posture clinic with Sam Stang, she brought up, and this is really something that, while I wouldn't necessarily do it for a regular, your average class, where people have been doing yoga for a while, for beginners, and this might be obvious, I don't know, but I want to say it, you teach the variation first. And then maybe you give more challenging or harder variations. But sometimes you don't even teach those, right? Like, I don't teach a full-on chaturanga with beginners. And we can talk more about that as we get into this. So here's what I would like to do. I am going to, we have a little time for this. I'm going to put you into some groups up to the point you're at. So with Utkatasana, and you're just going to let me take a vote. I'm going to go vote for real this time, not opposite world. Would you rather do some group work or individual work right now? So who would rather do group work? Like breakout rooms, group work? Katie, you might be alone in your group work, which means you'll be doing individual work, but we'll be with you in spirit. So I'm taking it individual work is the vibe today, and that's cool. That's why I stopped myself. I was kind of thinking it might be. Thanks for being adaptable, Katie, because we'll go with the group this time. What I'm going to have you do, I'm going to assign you a section or two, and you're just going to look at what's in that part of the sequence. And I want you to come up with a few ideas for each of these categories. We'll do this together first, then we'll come back and we'll talk about what you come up with. So let's talk about integration, right? What are the poses we have? We have child's pose, tabletop, cat-cows, down dog, forward fold, extended mountain, and then hands at heart center, right? Let's go through each of these as a group, and then I'll have you go on your own and do a little work. First off, thinking about all of these, are there any where you would change the length, change the hold, how long we hold it? And this is where it might help you to have those poses in front of you, although you've probably taught integration 10,000 times by now. Ragdoll? Yeah, you could, for sure. Let's break it down. Okay, let's think it through. Child's pose. Yay or nay? Would you keep it the length it is? Would you shorten it? I guess. Keep, this is shorten. Keep. Okay. I'm going to tell you that it can be torture for beginners because of the deep knee bend. And so, and it can feel kind of unsafe and scary to have your back on a room with your eyes closed. So for me, this is one where I actually do more of the talking when they're seated and then a little less once they're in child's. Child's is great. It's up to you, but that's just something I have found. Cat-cows, I actually would keep, and I'll tell you why as far as length. It's a great way to start teaching vinyasa, one breath per move. This might be the only time they actually get it. Plus, it's a movement almost everyone's done before, and it feels really good. There's reasons you could cut it too. Yeah, Kayla, I'm with you. I would cut down dog quite a bit. Down dog is torture pose. And this is for some new students. And this is where then we can give an optional, we want to give an optional swap, which we'll get into in a minute. Yeah, maybe ragdoll, maybe not. Just you can kind of feel that one out. But my big ones, I would say, are child's and down dog. They're ones we take for granted when we've been practicing enough, but they can be very uncomfortable. What would you modify? Anything where you'd give a modification, and let's say and or swap. We'll get into swap category. I see typing happening. Fetus for childs, yeah, that's a great one, Kayla. Let them know if child isn't comfortable, come onto your side and curl up. What about down dog? What's a good swap or modification? Of course, we can teach it with knees bent. That's a great variation. Yeah, tabletop. I come back to tabletop throughout the whole series. I remind them that that's an option. And the rest of them, it's the modifications you would give anyway, right? Like deep knee bend and forward fold, things like that. All right. Would you cut anything from this series? If you would cut something, give me a thumbs up. If you would not, give me a thumbs down. Yeah, I'm personally with you on this one. You could justify cutting. I mean, you could do whatever you want with beginners. There's a lot of reasons you could justify taking anything out almost, but I'm with you. I think this sequence, nothing needs to be cut. So that's how you'll go through your section as I assign it. I'm going to grab something to write this down for myself. So pardon me. Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 10, and we have, oh, this is lovely. All right, this worked out. I love it when things work out. They usually do, huh? All right, so you'll work on your own, but I'll be asking you for your feedback and your input. I might not get you on every section. I might not, so like Belle, if she has whatever, I might not have her report back on all 4 questions, depending on time, but be prepared to. So we'll start with 5 minutes and then I'll check in on you. And let's see, with Sun A, I'm going to give that, Tori will work on it. Hi, Tori. I haven't really heard you today. Good to see you. Tori and Katie, you'll work on your own on Sun A and start asking yourself those questions. Sun B, I feel like this is a tricky one. Or could be Kayla, you'll have it, and so will Bill. We'll have Sun B. Core is shorter, but it's just as important. So that's, I'll go up here to Jenny and Christian. Jenny, Christian, anyone who, if you get done ahead of time, you can always start looking past Utkatasana and kind of just guessing what you might do for some of the others. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Belle, for the reminder. I know you sent that to me privately, but I just want to acknowledge that I'm sorry I did that, and I will be better. I will do my best to be better. Keep reminding me. Flo and Caleb, you will have Crescent. And then Max and Corey, that leaves Utkatasana for you, which you just are new to. And Corey. Okay, so it is 12:15. I will just kind of mute myself and let you work. I'll check in with you in 5 minutes and see if you're ready. And if not, we'll take a little more time. Okay, any questions? All right, send them to me if any come up. Okay, we are at the 5-minute point. If you need more time, will you indicate that to me somehow, please?
I need a little more time.
Okay, I can't see who that is for some reason. Corey, how
Yep.
much more time do you need? I think it looks like you're the only one.
I can work on it as other people are.
How did you get somewhat far into it?
I did. I've been thinking about it. I was trying to find, because this new one to me, I was trying to find variations in how I would do it. Because I know I want to change it, but I don't exactly know how. So that's what I was doing.
Well, no, you're great. I think what we'll do then, since everyone else is ready, I think what we'll do is just move forward, and we'll just kind of, it'll be a great discussion point when we get to yours, because you had Utkatasana, right? The new one. Yeah. Okay, great. All right. So starting with Sun A, and I want you all to just kind of think through this too, right? We've got down dogs, we've got the half series. Oh my goodness, the half series. So Tori, why don't you take a minute and just let me know your key points, and then I will ask Katie to go.
Okay, so one of my cue points, are one of the things that I noticed that we could potentially cut out, was just taking out one round of the 1 breath per movement of Sun A. So that way we can give ourselves more time to give more detailed demos, especially if we do choose to demo the full half series. And then my notes on there was just definitely demo from the knee. Don't try to cue them through a high plank, just move through the knees. On time, definitely we could cut back on how long we have them hold in plank during the first focus, and then cue them from the knees in that plank, and then also the same on Cobra. But I wasn't sure if Cobra is a hard pose for a beginner to get into safely. This is an actual question. Is there something we can do for Cobra that can be more accessible?
I actually think Cobra is extremely accessible.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot more so than up dog. And it's especially when we're not putting weight in the hands and we're just working on strengthening the back body. When we're teaching it, it's been one that I think is a go-to pose. So it can be counterintuitive, and sometimes that's why it's good to have these discussions, because you might think it's harder. But when we're not worried about or teaching about getting up really high in it, it's a great pose. Yeah, it's a really good one. And it can be so good for people with lower back stuff too, actually. Yeah, good. Anything else you want to add to that right now?
That's everything that I have.
Okay. And you've moved around on me, but Katie's next. Katie, anything you would do differently or that you came across?
I think pretty similar to what Tori said. I said to shorten the plank, and then also maybe the down dog, like we had talked about earlier. And then doing it on the knees, and skipping the up dog, just doing the baby cobra. And then I think the other thing, so instead of skipping the third series, I just said to skip the plank part for the last time. And then
go right. So when you say skip the plank part, do you mean
the half series?
So from halfway lift, just have them step right back to down dog?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I was thinking maybe more emphasis on the bent knees for the forward fold. And for half lift, does that work too, to keep the bend in the knees for the half lift? Okay.
It's great for it. In fact,
then,
everyone usually needs it.
And then where's the best place for beginners to place their hands for half lift?
Shins or thighs.
Okay.
Yeah, you can even teach it kind of with elbows out and hands on thighs. And it's one too where they really they benefit from doing that one, like getting that visual. Like when you say a number 7, you'd be amazed how hard half series is and how rounded those backs are. And it's just one that takes that one will amaze you how long it can take people to get. But yeah, I agree with both of you. I just think the third round needs to be either cut or shortened up somehow. half series clearly needs to be dealt with a clear demo. One thing you want to think about is your breath. It is a long breath from high plank all the way down to the belly. A lot of times I'll say, okay, inhale to plank. I might have them hold there. I'm teaching it on the knees anyway. So I'm teaching them strength. I'm teaching them muscle memory for a good plank. You know, inhale here, firm your belly, something like that. And then exhale, lower to the floor. Sometimes that extra breath in the plank allows them to not just flop down to the floor because they're like trying to do it all in one breath. So also think about how you might change the breath work. And yeah, I always just teach from the knees to the belly to cobra, unless I have a group that I'm really like, okay, they're ready for some chaturanga work on the knees. Yeah, great work. Okay. Kayla, I'll ask you to talk for a minute about Sun B, hitting on your key ideas, and then Belle will follow up.
Okay, so the first couple poses, forward fold, halfway lift, I thought would be okay. Chair, the only modification I could think of for that one was hands to heart center, and then maybe just not holding it as long. And then the half series from the knees, or with the option to skip it. And then for three-legged down dog on both sides, I would say to hold less, because that can kind of be a posture that would lose its integrity for a beginner the longer they hold it with the hips. And then, sorry, my dogs are eating bones. And then Warrior 2, I think definitely is challenging, but important. So I don't know what a good substitute for that would be, or if it would just be something that we would hold less. And then you mentioned getting rid of the extended side angle. And then obviously probably cutting out a round of Sun B, because Sun B is so long. Or maybe doing chair the first round and omitting it for the second round if we cut the third round entirely. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got the right big picture. It'd just be a matter of cleaning it up and really getting your specific ideas around it. Yeah, great work. What do you have, Belle?
So specifically with the Warrior 2, I was thinking it might be helpful to have them. I also wanted to cut the three-legged down dog just the time, but when they come from that, have them come into a lunge with their back knee down. Because I know even for me, sometimes it's hard to get that like press up from the lunge to Warrior 2 without hurting my low back. So maybe just getting them into that open posture with a knee down on the floor would get the same chest opening. And then if we got the legs maybe like on the last round or something like that, and skip the lunge. And then the other thing I was thinking about was maybe adding, like, if they were going to do the full warrior sequence standing, just maybe adding like a break for them to like stand up for a second so their knees aren't hurting if it's like too much, or just like reiterating that they can take a break. And then maybe adding for the half series, have them take a plank and then do a cat-cow to still open up their chest like a cobra would. And I also wanted to cut the chair. I don't know, maybe like a squat, like a nice soft like wide-legged squat with their hands at heart center. But yeah.
Good, great thinking. And I like the creativity of you know, cat-cow is great, and we're getting that heart opening there, so that can certainly happen. Yeah, I think you're both right. We want to shorten Utkatasana. I don't think you need to cut it generally. It's pretty accessible. And I agree. This part is what can get people. Like we've talked about before, there's just so much tension here. People will modify it on their own. They're only going to go as deep as is right for them. So you're just keeping an eye on the knees and making sure they're not doing anything funky. Although it doesn't mean you can't cut it and do other options. You're right. I do think it needs to be shortened. And if you're keeping the whole warrior series, you need to think about breaks, like you said. or cut the second one, or cut out, you know, extended side angle. If you cut out extended side angle though, well, you have to think about the breath. How's the breath going to work, right? So just always be thinking ahead. You can't just think poses, you think, how does the breath link? So what I might do is inhale, warrior two, exhale, check that the front knee is above the ankle. Inhale, reverse warrior, keep your lunge. Exhale, high plank on the knees. Inhale, pull in your tummy, firm your core. Exhale, lower to your belly. Inhale, cobra. Exhale, down dog. So again, that's kind of what I might do. It's not the only way to do it, for sure. Now that getting the knee forward, you brought up a good point, and I just want to give you a little trick on this. A lot of times they can't get their foot as far forward because they're trying to do it from down dog. They're not rotating their shoulders over their wrists into a plank, because we essentially go three-legged down dog to a plank, a three-legged plank, and pull the knee through. When they keep their shoulders back, their knee can't come as far forward. So I will often explicitly teach that, and we'll do 2 rounds on each side to get a little muscle memory, a little strength built. And it can be done from all fours. But yeah, I think you both have the right idea. I don't know. I probably wouldn't bring them forward either for this second round, for that second Utkatasana. Yeah, but you want to think of little places where you can cut out things so you spend more time on important things. Is it really important to come forward and do another forward fold, another halfway lift, another Utkatasana? Or is it more important to spend some time on getting good alignment in the warrior? So yeah, great work. Okay, let's go on to core with Jenny first and then Christian. Oh, I'm sorry, Kayla, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Belle and I just had a quick question about reverse warrior. How does that usually go for beginners? We both forgot to mention it.
What's your question? Like, how do they do with it, or?
Yeah, is reverse warrior usually an easy one that you don't have to modify at all, or?
I love it. Their only thing is they straighten their front leg because they're tired from their lunge warrior, and that's okay. It's kind of like you sneak a little break in for them by letting them cheat right there. That's what I think of it as. It's like they're like, oh, thank goodness, I'm out of that warrior. I do keep the knee bent, but it's a great one, I have found. Yeah, good question. Anyone else before we go on to core? Anything you have a question about? Okay, Jenny, go for it.
Okay, I feel like I'm just making stuff up here, but we'll see if any of this makes sense. So for Supta Baddha Konasana sit-ups, okay, I don't have that. They could change it to where their feet are flat on the floor, so it's more of a crunch, and just come up lower. Bicycle option of keeping the head on the ground and just bringing the legs up, and keeping the legs bent at a 90 degree. Boat, I put maybe eliminate it, or just definitely hold it a shorter length of time. And make sure to show all the modifications with that one. So they could do it with their feet on the floor. The bridge, I put, make sure you have your like yoga accessories, because they could do it with a block between their knees, or bring the hips up lower. And then like if bridge isn't accessible at all, I put that it could be swapped for like a kind of a cactus arm back bend, or a small back bend with your hands on your back. That's what I got.
I think that's excellent thinking, Jenny. You're not just making it up. You're doing really good thinking. Yeah, nice job. I won't comment on it yet because I want to hear what Christian has to say, and then I'll hop in there.
So a lot of mine are pretty similar. For the, I'll try to, Supta Baddha Konasana, we could do supports under the legs, under the thighs, so they're not really holding them up, but they still get that opening. And then they can just do a tiny crunch or whatever is available. For the bicycles, same as Jenny, just a smaller twist. Either, yeah, you could just do it lower body with the legs, or just do it upper body with the chest. And then I guess, yeah, obviously less of all these. For the boat, I also struggled with that one. I want to keep it. I don't want to exclude it. But I said you can maybe just do it. You can maybe just do full seated and do like mini leg lifts to get the lower abs, or I even said you could just practice like rocking kind of back and forth. Um, I know it's kind of an isometric thing, so I'm not exactly sure about that one, but uh, and then for bridge pose, yeah, my big one was you could just do it with support, um, just some sort of opener, but with a bolster or block or something.
Yeah, awesome, Mark, you too. I am so thrilled neither one of you cut out the heart opener, because that speaks so much to what you're actually understanding about what we're doing in this sequence. That one almost always people try to cut it. And I'm like, no, we need our heart. We need that extension of the spine. And if we cut it here, then, yeah, really great insight. I agree, Belle. Here's what I would say. All of these are pretty accessible, and the modifications or variations you gave would all work 100%. My only thing is I think you'll run out of time if you keep them all. The choice I make when I teach it, and you could totally disagree with this and it would be okay still. I choose to cut Supta Baddha Konasana sit-ups. Here's my reasoning. If we do bicycles, most people have done bicycles. So great, and I'm working the core in a different way. Boat pose, my justification for keeping it is it leads to, if we teach a really modified, simple version, it leads to boat pose, right? Where Supta Baddha Konasana sit-ups, they're nice, but are we really teaching them a pose that will lead to other, a pose we do in yoga? So to me, I'm like, I love boat pose. And it's accessible to anyone. We just sit up. A lot of times I have them keep their hands on the ground and we just work on like coming onto the knees are bent, but on the toes and drawing the toes and the heels back toward the butt and sitting up tall. And they can get a lot of strengthening and that feel right there. I'm never going to go into a beginner class and show the kind of boat I do at home, which is one of my only poses that most of my poses are very modified, and I'm showing you the full version I do. Boat pose, I can do straight legs for a while. I'm not going to show it that way. It's just something that's my body's has pretty easy alignment with. But if a beginner even sees it, so this is where I want to talk about demoing. There's a place where you show your fullest version, and it's probably not in a beginner's class, because it's defeating to them to be like, oh, I'll never get there. But instead, if you're just like, here we are, and you're doing it with them, and you're doing the most modified version, that is empowering to them. So that's the point I want to make there. And bridge is great for beginners. You just really have to watch the neck. That's the thing that they do this. So I would maybe demo bridge, because otherwise, even if you say keep your chin center, they're like, what's really happening? And bolsters, blocks are great for it. Oh my goodness. You got to watch Nawali Kriya today. We do that in our 300 hour. We learn to do it. It's fun and frustrating at times. Okay. We've got 2 more to get through, and we're fine on time. But I do want to keep going. Crescent, Flo, will you please talk, and then Caleb.
Okay, so I thought, looking just at the flow, like you're kind of later in the flow, I just thought with this one, I would do it from the knees for all of them. I might shorten some of the breaths in the lunge, but I was wondering, like for crescent, instead of arms up, I wanted to focus on making sure the shoulders are over their hips. So if I offered to them like hands on the hips, if that would focus them more on making their shoulders are over their hips, and then keeping that square. So that might be a little easier than worrying about the hands also. And I guess like maybe skipping the half series part of it at the end as well. And I had a question about the revolved crescent. I couldn't really think of a substitute other than like a twisted chair, but I saw that later on in the flow, we already have a twist. So I thought maybe this could be omitted if you did want to remove something. And I think, yeah, I was just checking here. Yeah, I think those are the only changes I would make because it isn't super long, this part. And if you take it from the knees, it's kind of a little better to focus on sort of the primary areas that you want them for safety. The only thing was the side plank. I think I would offer to them on the elbow versus on the wrist initially, just so they can see that that is doable from the elbow. It's a little less hard on the shoulder and the wrist.
All right, great thinking. Thank you. And let's hear from Caleb now, please.
Yeah, I would I'll keep basically everything the same. For resolved crescent, I'd offer the chair, revolved chair. I'd probably keep it like around 3 breaths for them, if they're newer and everything. And then for like side planks, what's that move where you're tabletop and then you lift right leg and right arm and then like left leg, and then you do like opposites?
Bird dog, or sometimes it's called phoenix. I've heard all kinds of names for it. But
okay,
yeah.
I would offer that instead of side plank, or like Flo said with the elbow. Forgetting what else I had. I could have sworn there was something else. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
So basically, yeah, I agree with Flo on everything. Yeah.
And see, I love when that happens because it just shows how evolved your thinking has become for all of you with looking at sequencing and what makes sense and why we're doing the things we're doing. Because you couldn't have had this discussion or done this work week 1. So like, I just want to applaud you all. This is awesome work. And what are your,
sorry, what are your thoughts on the side plank variation, or not variation, like a swap?
I'm going to give you my thoughts on the whole thing because this is a tricky one. This is, in my mind, one of the harder ones. The lunge, I would definitely, if you're doing it, do it on the knee, but you might need to have them tuck the mat under them. Or another thing that takes pressure off the knee, because that bottom knee on the ground can hurt, is to have them keep the back toes curled under and really press into both heels. And that helps take some pressure off the knee. If you do your revolved crescent, I would not cut a twist. We still need some kind of standing twist, because then when we get into supine twist later, it's so deep, and if we haven't done it standing, the body's just not quite ready. And it needs to be one almost, it's like preparing us for that deeper, more relaxed supine. So I think both of your instincts are right in keeping that and being like, oh, if I cut it, is that right? If you keep it with the lunge, you can do it upright, so they don't have to bring the elbow to the knee. We can do upright twists with hands at heart center. Or both of you had great instincts, do an Utkatasana with I would even do that upright maybe, but bending it and bringing the elbow down, it's more accessible in that Utkatasana rather than in the crescent. For some reason, it just gets really complicated that way. So I would keep it somehow. You probably need to cut something from this series. I would consider just cutting plank altogether, but if you want to keep it, you can do elbow down. However, most people aren't lifting that both legs is hard. So it depends on where they are. If I have 60-year-old women who haven't done a lot of strengthening exercise and work, or men, but this is just a class I've actually had, I needed to go in and it was more appropriate to bring the bottom knee down. So you plank with the bottom knee down. Whereas if I had a military group coming at 6 a.m.s for a while, and they're all very strong, they could do more like elbow down, but legs extended. And you're right too, Caleb, the bird dog, it's working slightly different ways, but we're still learning a certain amount of balance, right? Because side plank is a balance and it's about core stability. So even though you're not getting the same extension in the side body, I still think it's an appropriate strengthener and could be really good in lieu of side plank. Yeah, so does that answer your question that you had, Caleb? And then does anyone else have any or any other comments? All right, you're doing great. I know this kind of works hard on a Sunday afternoon. You're doing awesome. We have one more. Let's give Max and Corey the same attention we've given everyone. Max, start us out, and then Corey, I know you were still kind of working on it, but you can follow up with any insights you've had.
Alrighty, so this one kind of got me because it seems like everything in the Utkatasana sequence is like there for a necessary purpose, so like balance you out, equal out what you just did. But I was also considering, like, in the flow of sequence, once you get to this point, you're a little bit fatigued, you know, you're definitely not super energetic. So it's like gaze forward, fold forward, and then go into your chair. And I was thinking, instead of hands overhead, just hands heart center to make it a little easier, kind of just reiterating a lot of the adjustments. And then instead of 5 breaths, maybe just 3. And then when you go into your eagle pose, just reiterate your kickstand, and then also just like holding your shoulders versus doing the entire arm thing, because that really like makes you focus on like trying to be so erect. And then again, just like cut a couple breaths out of there, and then you go to extended mountain, and then gorilla, and reiterate the bending of the knees just so nobody's really trying to strain themselves, and then also cut out a couple breaths there. And so from this point, I was kind of trying to balance in my head between cutting standing halfway lift and just meeting straight to down dog, or you could do your half series, just like that little extra back bend, you could just get through your down dog, I feel. And then gaze forward, forward fold, chair, and then eagle, and again, cut a couple breaths. And then you go down to extended mountain, and then forward fold, and then you come to crow. And I feel like crow is one of those things where people are always like, you can do this if you want to. You know, you kind of get a break when you're going to demo it as a teacher. And then it's like, you can do crow or not, or you can do a restorative child's pose instead if you want to just kind of be with the group, still doing like a grounding activity, but also like, you know, relaxing a little bit. So that's kind of what I felt. And then also crow was like 3 to 10 breaths, and I was like, that's a lot.
10 breaths, come on. Yeah, good thinking, Max. Really good work. Corey, what do you want to add to that, if anything? And if you're not
that's okay. That's okay. So I went through, I have it all. I kind of, with Max, the first part, I'm pretty much the same with the modifications. I would change gorilla to doing a forward fold or a ragdoll, just because it's not quite as deep of a stretch, and for people that might be a little bit easier. And then I would cut out probably the half series. So I would go straight from like the standing halfway lift into the forward fold. And then I cut out the second chair and eagle, because I think that gives more time to play with crow, because you can walk them through kind of maybe not doing the full crow, but you kind of teach them the posture of you know, arms to armpit, and then you lean forward just until you get the start of the inversion, that feeling. And then that's kind of how I went through it.
Yeah, I think that you both did excellent thinking. And I have to say, it's hard when it's one you just learned. So I applaud you because, and this is one of the harder ones to figure out, what the heck am I going to do with it? I would say this. Generally, I have time at this point for a balance on each side, and then something fun or something else. So what I mean by that is I usually have to cut everything, and we just come to standing. We go into a short Utkatasana. If eagle's my balance, which I do think eagle's a really good one for beginners, because you can have the kickstand. I would teach it with kickstand, and just working on knees aligning with the belly rather than going to the side. So really working on lower body stuff and drishti. I would, like you said, Max, I would cut this and do this, because it's hard to find. You all know, this is why eagle's so hard, your drishti. It's called eagle pose because eagles they see out of their 2 eyes separately, right? They're not seeing the same thing. And that's what's happening, is your vision's being cut in 2, and you essentially get to a point where you have 2 separate drishtis, which is a crazy feeling. It's like one will go in and one will go out, and then suddenly they both come in. That's a lot for beginners. That's a lot for advanced students. So yes, hands down. I am with you, Corey. If I'm going to do a forward fold between them, probably just do a simple one. But at this point, they've had lots of forward folds through all of the up, down, up, down. I'm probably going to cut it because of time. Not because it's not great, but because of time. And I would probably play with crow. And I'm glad neither of you wanted to just cut it, because that one always gets cut. And it is now, again, if I have my more geriatric crowd, I'm cutting crow. Even coming into a very modified crow is very hard and too much for certain people and certain bodies, and that's okay. But now if I have my military group in the morning who needs a challenge, and maybe they're finding they're not as flexible and things have been hard, can I give them a win? Because here is the thing we want. It does not matter what happens as long as people are safe and have an experience that makes them want to come back to yoga again. We just want them to come back, whether it's to our class or someone else's, because we know how good yoga is for people. So sometimes if we're like, ooh, I bet this person over here who's been struggling, I bet they can get into crow for a second. And I bet it's going to give them a win. Then I'm going to do crow, even if I know everyone else, no one else is going to even lift one foot. I'm going to maybe do crow just to give this person over here a win. But yeah, you can have fun teaching crow. So really great work. I do want to briefly touch on the last 3 series, even though you haven't gone into them specifically. At this point, I would be cutting all of my half series, and I would just be doing most of it like triangle. I'm just going to have them start in standing, and we do triangle. We come to center. We do a wide-legged forward fold if there's time. Then we do triangle to the back of the room on the other side. Cutting out these half series and all of this up and down and back and forth can really save you time. Oh, Corey, I did want to say one thing real quick. You do want to get both eagles because we want to get left and right. That's the only reason for that, is you would want to do that, just to keep that balanced. And that's the thing, is we do want to get left and right, but can we do left to the back of the room for triangle? Yeah, totally. Hip opening, we pretty well discussed. I mean, when we're getting into the hips, you just have to really be committed if you're going to teach that half pigeon, because it's a tricky one. So if it's not working, and even if you teach it, there's going to be people it won't work for. Just have something in your back pocket to offer instead. Locust is pretty great. Locust, that last heart opener on the belly there that you have toward the end right before surrender, it's going to be a good, it's a good one. People can generally do it. Even if they come off the mat half an inch, it's pretty accessible. The only other thing I really want to point out is in surrender, possibly offering to keep their eyes open in Shavasana. And I would add to this, saying what Shavasana is for. And I don't know if it was Flo or Christian, and I'm sorry, or maybe it was someone else who said, like, the beginners like to know, why are we doing things? I think everyone does, and you don't have to hit it on everything, but you can give them little things like, well, why am I lying here on my back in a room with strangers with my eyes closed? Well, we tell them, this is where you're really on an energetic level integrating the work you've done. This is going to help you release any residual tension. And when they know that, then it's easier. I do plan on bringing them out of Shavasana. Your beginner class is not the class where you're going to be like, okay, we're at the bottom of our hour together. You can stay in Shavasana and come out when you're ready. I'll see you out front. I don't like that in any class. Honestly, I know it happens, but definitely not in beginners, because you've broken their safe container. You're sitting there holding the space for them, so then bring them out of it. So allow time for that. I would just say give them a full experience. So I would just say keep applying as you're looking at this. Just apply these things. You're doing it in a really smart way already. Do you have questions on anything we've talked about, or triangle, hip opening, and surrender? Okay. Fist to five, do you feel like you can use these questions and these overarching principles to go in and try to look at how to teach beginners? How are you with that? And it's okay if you're not a total five, but how are you doing? A one's like, three? Okay, three's a start. Three's a start. And if there's anything I can add to that to get you to 4 or 5, let me know. But I think you're ready for a break. I would like to take 5 minutes. My computer and my watch and my phone never line up. We'll go with my computer. It says 12:56. Let's come back at 1:01. 5 minutes. I'm sorry to ask you that. If I can get done early, I will today. I'm not promising it, but move around. Please move. Go. I'll see you in a few. All right. Coming back, getting started. I want to start with prana pulling, just to help you get energy and mental focus for the last hour. And I'm just going to start, even though I don't see many of you yet. This is, it's a 3-part exercise, but we're just going to do one part of it today, and hopefully it'll help energize everyone. So what you'll be doing is your inhale, your arms will be up and overhead, and you can't see, but my fingers are spread open wide. This is my inhale. And I exhale, and I'm just pulling down, and I'm actually, it's like I'm trying to pull prana in through the top of my head, and it's fast. So it's a, and I'm really from my belly expelling on the exhale. So it's a, and then the inhale happens automatically. We call this Kapalabhati breathing. And we'll do, I don't know, 15 to 20 rounds. I'll count them out. We'll try to stay together. Then after the last one, what we'll do is, what are we doing? Oh, we're bringing our hands together into a mudra, where I don't care if you have left or right on top, either one's fine. Weave all the fingers together except index fingers, and we'll just sit here for a moment, breathing and letting the prana kind of flow. And this mudra helps us get focused. So they say, we'll see. You can let me know how it works. So pulling prana, remember, it's just, it'll start with the exhale, and you'll really strike the belly back toward the spine. Try not to move the chest. That'll just make you anxious. That's like giving yourself, that's hyperventilating, and we don't want to do that. So if you need to go slower, go for it. Start with your arms overhead. Inhale here, let the belly expand, and then we'll begin. Keep going, really thinking about pulling prana energy into the body, forceful exhalations, letting the inhale happen on its own. 3, 2, 1. Hands in the mudra, close your eyes. Just settle in, see what happens. Notice without judgment, how are you a little bit different right now than you were 30 seconds ago? Just like a scientist observing. And then let that mudra go. Puppy dogs like it when you pull prana. Max is like, I'm trying to focus here. Okay. Great. So this last little bit less than an hour, we will be talking about Vayus and Mudras. And chances are you haven't heard about Vayus yet, and that's why we're talking about it today. And so good to see you, Diana. I know you're in and out, but it's really lovely to see you. Vayus. What are they? They're part of the energy body. And the definition, the literal translation is winds, like W-I-N-D, the wind, winds, plural, okay? Here's an explanation that tends to work for a lot of people, kind of an analogy, and I hope it'll work today for you. Here's how this all works together and where Vayus come in when we're talking the energy body or the subtle body, okay? So you've heard of the nadis, right? Yeah? Let me get, I just need to, I want to type stuff to you, so I need to, give me just a second. So nadis. The nadis are like the streets or roads. So if we imagine the energetic system almost like a map of a city or something, the nadis would be the streets and roads. They're what carry the prana or life force through us. So prana is, right, you've heard this before, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, prana is life force. So you can imagine it like the little cars and trucks on the road going in different directions and, you know, going over here to do this thing and over here, all over the place. That's the prana moving through the nadis or the cars on the roads. Now, the Vayus, and I'll spell that for you here, which are called the winds, or which are, that's the literal translation. Vayu is wind. They really control the direction of the traffic. Okay, so if traffic is on, you know, here in Colorado Springs on Austin Bluffs moving west, that westward movement is the Vayu. It's a direction of energy. That's really all it is. And there's 5 Vayus, which means there's 5 directions the energy flows or is directed. Questions so far? How's that sit with you? Is that making sense? Good? Okay. Now, each Vayu has, it kind of has a home. It has a place where it's at its strongest. It doesn't mean it's only there. And I'll show you what I mean by that. I'm going to do some screen sharing, and this will also show you where you can start to draw on your little person that you have. Here we go. Okay. So the first Vayu we have, and we're just going to go through one at a time. Don't worry about drawing all these right now. It is strongest. The area it governs is from about, you know, your pointy points at the front of your hip bones, the ASIS points, from about there down. And it's called Apana, A-P-A-N-A. And it's generally represented with a downward arrow. And I'll be in and out of the screen share quite a bit. So if you didn't quite get that, you will. But I prefer to see you as much as I can. So prana is governing that part of the body. It doesn't mean you don't have downward moving energy in your head, in your hands, in your arms, but it just means this is where it's the strongest. Okay. What we'll be talking about today, let me back up real quick. We'll talk about where it's at, okay? What a healthy expression is. So I forgot to give you chakras. I'll get back to that in just a second, how chakras fit into all this. But what a healthy expression. What is it like when each Vayu is healthy and functioning correctly versus what it's like when it is, what an imbalance looks like in it. And then what poses and practices will strengthen it if it's weak. So we'll be looking at all those. And I'm sorry, I just want to back up and get chakras. Chakras are where we have a lot of nadis. It's major intersections. So it's intersections where we have lots of prana coming through. It would be, again, like Austin Blossom Academy, or, and I know not everyone's here, but I think everyone's been here. Any big intersection, right? These are major intersections, are your major chakras. Smaller intersections, they get more minor as there's less prana flowing through them, as there's fewer nadis connecting and crossing at those spots. That's what the chakras are. And because of this, then we have certain chakras sit, they work more with certain Vayus, right? So when we look at this picture we have here, we have really 2 chakras that work in accordance with Apana. We have root chakra and our sacral chakra. And it makes sense, right? Because we have, when you think of what those chakras govern, well, it very much aligns with what Apana does. Apana is a downward moving energy. So when it's healthy, we are able to get our energy and our bodily systems to release, which, you know, by knowing about root chakra and second chakra, right? We have bladder there, we have intestines there. So we have a physical release that needs downward movement. We also, for bodies that menstruate, we need that Apana for the blood to be released each month. So Apana has really important functions in the body, and it works with those 2 chakras. When it's balanced, that's all working well. and I'm going to kind of talk through the first one, then I'll ask you more questions. I'll ask you for more thinking as we go into the others. But I just want to give you an idea by talking through this first one. Now, when Apana is weak, now each Vayu, it can be weak, it can be balanced, or it can be strong. But each Vayu has an opposite one. So it's almost easier to talk about how to strengthen one rather than how to weaken it. And this will all start to come together. Let me show you what I mean by this. I'm going to talk about Apana being weak and how to strengthen it. When it is too strong, its opposite, Udana, which pulls upward, is usually weak. So it's easier just to talk about how do I strengthen Udana. In general, and in yoga, when we're looking at this, we just want to look at which one's weak and how to strengthen it, and it will naturally weaken the one that's too strong. Once I start, if this one's too strong and Apana's weak, once I start strengthening it, it will naturally start to weaken the one that's too strong. It hurts your brain if you try to think of both. So I'm going to talk about the imbalances when it's too weak. When it is weak, we're looking at in the body, right? Well, what do you think is happening in the body when Apana is weak, when there's not this downward flowing energy? Yeah, did you have one, Christian? Or was that just a movement?
It was a movement, but so if we don't have the force pulling down, things go up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, it's that simple, right? Yeah, constipation, we need this to release. And that goes into an energetic, emotional, mental, emotional level too, right? Constipation, stress, yeah. So Belle, you're getting into that mental, emotional body. When we are stressed and anxious, our energy all wants to go up. None of that residual energy is grounding us. There's no grounding, there's no release happening. We have to have that. That's why Shavasana is so important, right? You could also, someone who doesn't have enough of this could be uptight. I mean, right? We even think about having to stick up one's butt is an expression that's probably not just random. It's because there's a certain upward, you're not letting go, right? So when it's not strong enough, there's not enough of this letting go on any level happening. I gave you the ultimate pose for it, but what are some other poses if it's weak, or even breath practices, or even lifestyle choices or activities that might, and you probably know this from talking about the chakras. Think about the first two chakras. Shavasana, I'm sorry. Shavasana is the ultimate one. But what are poses that will strengthen it? And I'll tell you why Shavasana does. Apana, the more of us that's touching the ground and not working away from gravity, the more we're submitting to Apana. Think of it almost like gravity, right? The more we submit to that and let go and don't resist it and pull away from it, the more we're allowing it to be strong and to do its thing. So that's why Shavasana is a great one. What are some other good ones? And you can either mountain. Jenny, mountain, yes and no. I wouldn't teach it just for this, but we could focus. And this is the cool thing. If we want to build a practice around this, we can put this emphasis into any pose we do by really pressing into the earth and grounding, right? Although I will say in general, most of us is lifting up and away from the ground. So see, these are kind of, it's not always what you think. But once we start talking, I think it gets a little more intuitive. Lotus, yeah, I mean, there's lots of contact with the ground, and there's this opening and expansion through the hips and the legs and all the joints there. Folded pigeon, yeah. Another good one where it's just, there's an opening of the hips. There's also a submitting to surrendering. Child's pose, yeah, I agree, Max. I think that's a great one. Can someone just try to give me one activity in life or thing you could do that's maybe not yoga, or not typical. We know it's all yoga, right? On some level. Shower, weighted blankets. Yeah, great. I'm thinking a bath, any of those kinds of things. Swimming, yeah. Yeah, you're thinking second chakra stuff, right? Time outside, grounding, nature. Yes, yes, yes. Horse riding. I imagine it is, Corey. Yeah. Good. So hopefully now we know what Apana Vayu is, where it's at, what it's like when it's healthy, and some things we can do to strengthen it if it's weak. Give me a fist of 5. So early on in the Vayu, sometimes it's a lot to be talking about, but if I asked you just to describe a Vayu to a friend, could you describe Apana Vayu? No. How can I get you there? Would it help to keep going into the other Vayus? Yeah, anything with downward force. And it is a downward force. Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. Yeah, Belle.
So I guess I'm just a little bit confused because I understand how it ties into the analogy of traffic in that it directs the flow. But I'm kind of having a hard time understanding like what exactly it is, like if it's also an energy point like a chakra, or if it's more of just
It's in fact, I like how Christian said it. It's a force. It's just a direction. You have to get a little abstract about it because it's not it's not a thing. It's the direction the prana moves. So it's like gravity, right? Is a force that pulls down. This is a force in your body that pulls down.
So like where it's the strongest is the hips would be kind of where like the energy flow shifts to where the energy naturally is going to flow downward from that point.
Yeah, it's just going to be a little stronger there naturally. Yeah. Yeah. Great questions. Anyone else? A vector. Yeah, it is. It is. Very much so. Okay. Well, let's keep moving. I'm just going to move up the body. So we're not getting to its opposite yet. We're getting to the next one, which is called samana. I will type it in here and then I'll show it to you. I should have done that on the other one. Samana is from those hip points up to roundabouts lower rib cage, kind of solar plexus area. I like drew a little belly button on this person because it's about in the middle. Samana is the movement of energy, or it's the force that moves the energy from outward to inward. So it's often drawn, see these are 4 arrows all pointing from the periphery, the outside, to the inside. Samana, what chakra or chakras are at Samana Vayu? You know what it is. Yeah, solar plexus, navel, Manipura. Yep. Thanks, Belle. And so you can think about it. I mean, think about this. We have our digestive fire here. Energetically, it's fire. What does fire do? It consumes. It breaks things down. That's what's happening. This is your seat of your belly's here, your stomach, right? So digestion is taking things and literally through force, breaking them down and then sending what we don't need down to get rid of. Apana then takes it and then taking what we do need and redistributing it. So this is digestion. This is breaking things down. And it's that when it's happening, it's healthy, right? And also on a mental emotional level too, digesting experiences, being reflective, going inward. Of course, that can get too strong, but we'll talk about that later. There are people who naturally are going to be stronger here and tend to be maybe more introverted. You'll find the one that you're strongest with is the one where when you're most out of whack, it tends to overtake everything, right? So if your samana is naturally kind of strong and you're naturally very reflective and introverted, a lot of times if you're out of whack in life somehow, like it just out of balance, it's the one that tends to be like, and we're going to introvert really hard and not leave the house for a month or whatever it is. And you're like, okay, it's too strong. But what's this one going to look like when it's too weak? And you can tell me about either in the body, in the mind, in the emotional center, in the spirit, in the personality. What's it like when it's weak? There's not enough of this happening. Then what is happening? Yeah, I saw it with your hands there, Christian. Ooh, I'm getting so many good things. Yeah, I want to say to Katie's low self-esteem, it certainly could be, yeah, because that Manipura is there too, and it's so connected with self-esteem. If it's weak, there can be almost even a disconnection from self, right? Because it's too much looking outward. Now, almost this disconnection from who I am and what I need and what I'm taking in from the world. Overindulgence, yeah, sure. Just taking in. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me think this one through. Hang on. If it's weak, overindulgent.
I guess what I meant was like by overindulging, kind of like, don't know if you guys have experienced it, but I am an emotional eater. So if I'm really upset, I will just keep eating, even though I don't have time to digest anything. And then it becomes like, you know, like when you're eating all through the day, like if you're on vacation and you're just eating like really like rich foods constantly, trying to find like you're reaching out for everything to look for validation when you could have been turning in to look for validation. That's
Gotcha.
kind of what I meant by the overindulgence, if that clears things up for
I
you.
get that. Yeah. And I think that is, and I think what you said there that's really big is that looking out rather than being willing to look in, right? And trying to find answers or even putting blame. Never being like, oh, I'm responsible, but being like, victim. And it doesn't mean we're never victims in life, but it's one of those things. I actually just read, does anyone know who Edith Eger is? I might be saying her last name wrong. She's a Holocaust survivor. She's 93. She's writing books. She got her PhD when she was 50. Her parents were killed in the gas chambers the very first day they were taken to Auschwitz. And this woman is amazing. And she talks about victimization and how the difference is when things happen in life, either asking yourself, why me versus what now? And so I think there can be a lack of personal responsibility when this one is weak. On the other side, which I'm trying not to get into right now, if we overthink everything we do, if we overanalyze ourselves, we get almost a little self-absorbed in that way. If we massage every thought we have and everything interaction we've had, that would be the other side. So what poses, if this one's weak, right, and we're going out too much, we're too busy, we're not self-reflective, we're not digesting experiences, what poses could be good for it? So if this one's weak, we want to strengthen this action, right? Boat, yeah, I'm with you, Katie. I think you're saying that too, because navel, right? And it's strengthening that center. Cow, more so cow. Cat is like an expansion. Cow, or I'm telling you the opposite. Cow is an opening. Cat is more of this constriction and bringing it in. So I would say with that one, Corey, cat pose for sure. Rabbit, I would also say, think of poses that cross the midline of the body. Warrior 2 is more going from the inside out. That'd be the opposite. We want more coming from the outside in. Twist. Look at all those people. It's funny how we get on the same thought. Forward fold, yeah. Twist, yes. Twist, plow. I see plow there for sure. Ragdoll, yeah. So it's like this inward. It's those more introverted poses, right? A big one, I think, is eagle. We're crossing that midline and we're coming to center from the extremities. That's another one, I think. But yeah, I mean, I think you've got the right idea. And then on a personal level, it's things like journaling, maybe seeing a therapist, maybe just taking time to self-reflect. We call it in yoga. It's a yoga practice, actually. If you like these things, I'll type it for you. It's called Pratipaksha Bhavana. And it's basically reflecting on what's going to happen if I do this, or what happened in the past when I did this, and then really taking responsibility for our choices in every situation we're in. Yeah. Cool. So Samana, what questions do you have about it? I think they start to make more sense as we get more into them. Like it starts to become more clear. But yeah, Katie.
Is there an opposite to work on it if it's too strong?
Yeah, but we'll get to that when we, instead of thinking about how to weaken one, instead we'll think about how to strengthen its opposite when we get to that one. Great question. Because there's 5 of them, we do have one that doesn't have an opposite that we're about to get to. Anything else? Yeah, Diana.
So if something happens and you feel it immediately in your gut, like, you know, that's the first place that tightens up or whatever, that means it's too strong and you want to like strengthen the ones around it?
It might not mean it's too strong. It might mean it's telling you something. If your instinct is, whoo, I don't like going in,
yeah,
it might be too strong. It might be a strong reaction that is appropriate. What we're talking about is when you're having inappropriate reactions.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That helps.
Yeah. Really good question. Great question. Because I do think that happens. I had it happen with a person recently, and I was just like, ooh, no. But like, I just even felt myself stepping away. And there's times where certain ones get strong because they need to be for you. Yeah.
That's good. That's good to know that. Thank you.
Okay, let's go into the next one, Prana Vayu, which is named after, here's where we get nice and confusing. We use the same word for lots of things. Prana Vayu is from, about that solar, I mean, these are the lines we're putting on it. It's not exact, there's overflow, but from about solar plexus, lower rib cage-ish area up to about collarbones, maybe. The interesting thing, so we usually call them the Vayus for simplicity. They're actually called the Prana Vayus because they're moving prana, right? They're like the wind blowing the prana in a certain direction. And this one's the prana. So this is the prana Vayu that moves prana. There's a lot of prana there. We like the word prana. This one, it's not as simplistic, and yet I think this one makes a lot of sense. It is drawn typically with an upward and then a forward moving arrow. Its main chakra, we know this, the heart chakra, right? When we're looking at this one, systems of the body, a little bit circulation, yes, but we'll get into that one more later. Circulation is usually the answer students give here, and I'll just, for the sake of time, tell you not really, but kind of. We're looking more organs. We're looking at heart and lungs. So we're talking breath. I mean, it makes sense. This one's called prana, right? Because it's heart and lungs stuff, physically speaking. Energetically, what we're talking about is when it's balanced, there's an uplift here. There's like this uplifted feeling that we have in the heart, right? We're able to move forward. It's what propels us forward. It gives us hope and faith so that we can move forward in life. And that's why it has that forward also. It's kind of like up and forward. It gives us, I mean, you know, heart stuff, compassion, all of these things. Let's talk about what it's like when it's too weak to start. So what are you going to see when there's not enough prana vayu, when someone's prana vayu is weak? Stagnant in life. Yeah, very good, Jenny. When you can't move forward, and we all get there, we can gently start to work on this vayu. And I like that Caleb wrote slouching, because that's exactly when, I mean, think about the opposite of this feeling, forward and up, is this feeling, right? And sometimes we have to have a little of that. Sometimes that's the grief, when we are going through grief. This one hurts so bad that we just kind of close up around it. And that's okay. And that's why we want to be gentle about how we start to strengthen this one again, especially if we're grieving in our lives in any way. I think grief is a hard one, but we also know this is how we hold ourselves when we're depressed, right? So we don't have that uplifted feeling, that hopeful, I can move forward, where I'm stuck. Life sucks. Can be hard-hearted. Yeah, I mean, just the opposite of compassion, not empathetic, like Christian said. Low self-esteem, Corey. Yeah, because there is this certain, when we feel good about ourselves, there's a brightness right here, right? Versus, don't look at me, I suck. Despair. Oh, yes, Flo. Being inconsiderate or unkind. Yeah, I mean, it can just be too much of a, I'm not going to give to others, I'm holding on tight. When we get, now I said we're not going to talk about when they're too strong, because there's always usually a complete opposite, and we'll talk about that one. But in this case, when this one is not functioning, it could be any of the others. It could be too strong and sucking energy from any of the others, or it could be too weak and sucking energy from any of the others. So this is one where if it's in your life, you just want to kind of delicately look at it. And again, usually I would just work on strengthening it, because that's easier than trying to figure out, okay, if it's weak, like I can do some heart openers, gentle heart openers, and that's going to help it. Whereas if I'm like, it's too strong, it's kind of hard to, there's things you can do to weaken it, but it's more likely going to show up as something else being too weak, and you can just focus on that. But I do want to talk about it. When it's too strong, you tend to, and I say, I want to point this out because yoga teachers tend to be people who do this. You tend to do what too much? What do you think? Yeah, right? Like heart stuff. Yeah, you tend to give too much, and maybe not with enough boundaries, or with there can be that thing that happens where you're drawn to yoga because you're a giving person, but this can be too much. For some people, it might turn into martyr syndrome, right? Like this, oh, I give it, and what do I get? But I just want to point that out, that this one, sometimes we think we can't have enough compassion and things like that, but we certainly can take it too far and forget to have it for ourselves. Yeah. Some of you are like, yep, I get that one. But let's talk poses. What poses will strengthen it if it's too weak? So someone's in despair, depression, or oh yeah, Belle too. That's a great point. Thank you for bringing up that forward moving, just going forward, not thinking. Yeah, if it's too strong, for sure. Without direction or without thought, just jumping in. Yeah, almost nervousness and being slow and steady about things. So what's going to strengthen it? Yeah, Jenny, you got it. Cobra, up dog, heart openers. I mean, this is the one where it's like, we know, right? Bridge, camel, all of these things are going to be great for it. Like I said, if you're working with someone who, you know what it's like, it's vulnerable. And sometimes it's closed because people feel so raw. And so if you're really noticing it in yourself or someone you're working with, start with just gentle stuff. Because this can be one that when we go too far, it goes, nope, I'm closing. That's scary. Not going to go there. Vulnerable. Good. Yeah, fish. So you've got the ideas. And in life, it can be, working with a charity or practicing, just even asking other people how they're doing and practicing empathy and compassion, things like that. Or, and I want to say something about the forward movement one. And brain, there's things like brain gym. Let me type this in here for you, where they've studied movements done through yoga, certain things in acupuncture. I think Tai Chi might be a third, that they've studied the impact on the brain. And what happens is when we've had something really hardcore emotional happen, we get stuck in either our lizard brain, our reptilian brain, right, which is like flight or fight, or in our limbic brain, which is very emotional and memory based. And it's hard to move forward until we get into this cerebral cortex where executive functioning happens, where we can kind of analyze and be like, okay, here's how I can get out of that really emotional or that stuck response and move forward. And the body movements that help with this are actually forward moving movements. So you think about having legs like this, crescent, lunge, even bringing a leg up into one-legged Tadasana and back. So these kind of movements, they watch the brain, and someone who's in a reptilian response or limbic response, when we do these movements, we actually help move energy in the brain. We are shifting energy. So this yoga stuff isn't all just a bunch of crap. The Vayus, they had it figured out with the Vayus, which it's not, but it's kind of cool. So, but do think if you are stuck and scared to move forward, crescent is going to be good for you. One-legged Tadasana, just kind of getting in this plane of forward movement, lunges, anything like that. What were those? What were what?
I started typing and then I hit return too quickly, but then you repeated them. So it's crescent, forward lunge. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, just anything kind of where we get the legs almost like they're walking. Even just walking helps with it. It's this kind of motion that helps. And it makes that sound, apparently. Okay. Shall we hop into the last two? We good? All right. Thanks for hanging with me. If you get tired, do your prana pulling. All right. Next one is Udana. Udana. Udana is from the collarbones to crown of the head or possibly above, depending on what we're looking at. Oh, I'll type in what text this all comes from too. I'll type that in. Help me remember that when I stop my screen share. Udana is the opposite of Apana. So it's just an upward pointing arrow. This one is, we've got lots of chakras. We've got throat chakra. We've got sixth chakra, which is actually like a cluster of chakras. It's like lots of little intersections close together. And then crown of the head, crown chakra. So we are talking here, and think of upward moving, just totally upward moving energy. We're thinking of throat chakra stuff. We're talking about throat itself, but we're also talking about self-expression, saying our truth, having integrity, being in line with our truth and our integrity, saying what we mean. Third eye, right? Now we have the brain. And so we're also talking mental processes, like how we problem solve, how we see the world, all of these things when they're happening in an upward, healthy kind of way. It would be connected with Udana. But there's also a bit of, like, when we talk third eye stuff, right? There's a bit of connection with an intuitive side, right? And then beyond that, when we get into crown chakra, there's an even bigger connection with something greater than ourselves, whether we call that God, divine, divinity, the universe, or just the greatest good for everyone, whatever that is, something greater than ourselves. There's a sense of purpose here and connection with that. So when this one is healthy, there's very much a certain positivity, connection, like I said, connection, healthy expression, healthy communication skills, even when it's hard, but doing it anyway, following one's dharma or purpose and duty, following one's duty in life is very much a part of this, that upward moving, that visionary kind of thing. When it's weak. So see how this works now? So yeah, I like to hit the wrong button. It's what I like to do every time. When it's weak, Apana is usually strong. And that's why we didn't talk about Apana being strong or how to weaken it, because instead it's easier to talk about how to strengthen Udana. And we're going to get the same answers that way. When we get into Samana, our opposite is Viyana, and we'll get into that next. So when this one is weak, what are some things you think might be happening in the individual? Yeah, unhealthy relationships and expression. Yeah, and generally when we're talking weak, Kayla, what it would be is not standing up for oneself, not saying one's truth. On the other side, when it's too strong, which just means we need more Apana, and we've already kind of dealt with, but it could be just being too forceful with one's words, too much self-expression without allowing others to do so. Yeah, Katie. Difficulty expressing needs, communicating with others, dissatisfaction. Jenny, yeah, I could see that for sure here. No vision, maybe scattered. Yeah, I could see that for sure. Fleeting, loose bowels. Yeah, because if this, let me think through this. Sometimes it's a mind bender. If this one, yeah, is weak, you're gonna have strong Apana. Yeah, got you there. Which is cool you brought that up, because that's then how it would show up in Apana. Distracted easily, could be, because this is very much a you're also going to get distracted easily without enough samana, because think about samana, it's all coming to one point. So samana really gives us focus. There's a certain amount of bringing things together to come to a point and a focus with samana. Anger. Yeah, I think so too. Anger or depression. I think it could go to either one or both. I've heard it said depression is the form of unexpressed anger too. I don't know. but I think both of those, right? If this one is weak, that means we have a lot of downward moving energy. And again, that is depression. It's lack of inspiration. It's lack of connection with something greater than oneself. And that can be very much a depressed, cut off feeling. So when we're feeling that way, we want to strengthen this one. What poses are going to strengthen, going to be the most Udana strengthening poses we can do? Extended mountain, yeah. I mean, I just talking about it, I can't help but actually kind of do that, right? It's like reaching up. Yeah, Corey got that too. That's funny. I'll also give you a hint. When Samana, okay, when Apana is weak, we want to touch as much of the ground as possible, right? To let that downward, that gravity kind of force take over. When this one's weak, we want to move away from the ground as much as possible. Yeah, inversions can be great for that. Just flipping up the way gravity normally works, taking it upside down. Plus, with a lot of inversions, we have very little contact with the ground. Yeah, chanting though, Jenny, I haven't been hitting on this much, but I'm so glad you said that, because there's other yoga practices that are great for these, and that would be one. Another one would be what we just did, that prana pulling. Even though there's this downward movement, there's just this up and down that's kind of energizing and enlivening. I would add, anytime you have as little contact, anytime, even though in like a balance on one foot or an arm balance on hand balance, right? You're pushing away. So you're grounding. Even though you're grounding, you're doing it to get that opposite force that lifts you up and off the ground. So arm balances, 1 foot balances, things like that, we're making as little contact with the ground as possible. And that lifts us up. Yeah, locust, same principle I was just talking about, right? Caleb, is that kind of what you're thinking? That little contact with the ground? Yeah. And a lot of these, this is the beauty of yoga. A lot of these are going to work multiple ones. So to an extent, locust is going to be prana also, right? It's very rare you're going to look, in fact, I can't think of any pose where you look at it and it's just working one Vayu. It will have a primary one and maybe a secondary or 2 secondary ones or so on. Good. Okay. Are we good to hop into the last one? Any questions? Okay, let's get Vyana, V-Y-A-N-A. This one doesn't have a home. It's our wandering Vayu. And that's why it's over here, because it really is kind of everywhere. This is what moves energy from the center to the periphery, to the edge, to the most outside. Maybe some would say even beyond the body. I don't know. I'm not going to get into that. So this is opposite of samana. So here where we have someone who naturally is strong might be more introverted, this person might be more extroverted. This person's reaction to stress might be going inward, right? Staying home, thinking, whatever. This person's reaction to stress might be like keeping busy, going, outward, outward, outward. This is where we get the circulatory system and the lymphatic system. It's that whatever's traveling and moving throughout the whole body. So when it's healthy, these systems are healthy, lymphatic, circulatory system, they're healthy, but we're able to circulate. We're able to go outside of ourselves. We're able to see, instead of being myopic in our view, we're able to see a bigger picture and go, oh, I know this was my belief, but I see what you're saying. Or I'm listening to you. I don't agree, but I'm listening and I want to understand. This is what Vyana can do for us, or just keeping, doing the things out in the world we need to do. This is what Vayana does for us. So when it's too weak, that means Samana is strong and we're doing too much of this, right? So when Vayana is weak, what are we seeing? Yeah, too self-centered, too much thinking of oneself. And it can even not even seem like, it'll be usually people who don't think they're egotistical because they feel a lot and they think a lot, but it's like, it's all about themselves. Everything moves slow. If this one is, yeah. I mean, I do think there's a certain, this one's kind of like action. Is that what you mean? Am I catching you with this? So when that action's not happening, there's kind of this like slowing down. Complacency. I think that could be for sure, Flo. Tired. Oh, Corey, I'm glad you said that. That's when this one's too strong. We tend to get tired because we're going. And in our lives, by the way, in the world we live in, we're forced into this one a lot. This one tends to be the one we are all tired because we do too much of this one because we have to get the kids, and now for many of you, homeschool the kids this week, next week, take them to school. Who knows? Eat, do yoga, study, go to work, keep a healthy relationship, blah, blah, blah. Make sure you check in with your parents. And are you reading a self-help book? And all of, do all of this doing. We get tired. And it's too strong. But we can also then go too far the opposite way. I think almost in reaction to it. I think that's where chronic fatigue can come in to an extent. So if this one is weak, what shapes are we going to make with our body in yoga, or what things are we going to do in our life to make it stronger? So when you're just like, I don't want to leave my house and talk to anyone, what shape in your body is going to help? Yes. Star, 5-pointed star is the ultimate. Take up as much room as you can. This one would be to get back to max. You said warrior 2, I think, for apana. It can be a little aponic, but I think the primary one, when we're moving away from center line of the body. Yeah, Diana, that's it. Yeah, leave the house. Right? Even if it's just to like go down to 7-Eleven and get a Slurpee. I don't know. I haven't done that since I was 12. Sounds kind of good right now. Get off Zoom. Amen, Jenny. Oh, perfectly said. And we're about to. Yeah, but it's just that it's taking up space. It's being, get outside of yourself, talk to someone, go do something, be active. So I wanted to bring these up, and I want to quickly go through and show you a mudra for each one also that can help strengthen them. Pose question. Yeah, Jenny.
Okay, it's not in our flow, and I can't think of it right now, but there's another one that's super similar to star, but you're like doing a squat, like a wide squat, and then bringing in, what, do you know what I'm talking
about? Like a version of goddess almost.
That's it, goddess. Yep, okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and again, it's that moving away from midline rather than moving into it. Good question. Yeah, crescent moon. Are you talking this one, the half moon, the like balance? Yeah. Okay. Here's what we're gonna do. Is someone willing to? I like the couple stuff. What's funny about that one, I'm teaching it in my class this week, and for like 2 days, I couldn't remember the name of it. And I'm like, I will not look it up. I've taught that pose like 1,000 times in my life. I refuse to look that up. It's like forgetting my dad's name or something. Just this week I did that. Okay, let me show you. I'm going to give you quickly some mudras. Mudras, they're just, it's like this. If you make a shape with your body and it changes your brain chemistry, it happens with your hands too. And we kind of discount them because it's so subtle. I've had experiences when I've been so broken down in teacher trainings that were way too long, where I've done mudras and felt amazing things happen because I'm so tired that I'm subtle. So they do have an impact. You just have to get real quiet to feel it. I spent a little more time on considerations for beginners today. So I'm just going to show you these and ask, could someone take a screenshot of the mudra and then share it? Or just take your own, let's do this. Could someone take a screenshot and share them on Facebook? Would that be, Katie's nodding? Yeah, okay, thanks, Katie. And then if you can either grab those or you can it just gets complicated to write down how these work. Yeah, not everyone's on Facebook, so those people will have to problem solve. Can you post pictures on Classroom? I think you could post files. Yeah. Let's do Classroom. Okay. If you can't, Katie, will you just, we'll figure out a way for you to get them to me and I can. I just am not, I don't have enough hands to demonstrate it and do a screenshot. I do want to give you, I know we have 4 minutes. This is the book to get if you're interested in mudras. It's Mudras for Healing and Transformation. It's not letting me type. By Joseph and Lillian Page. It's got mudras for everything. It tells you how they affect the Vayus, how they affect the chakras. It shows you, like, if you have depression, what mudra should you do? What one's going to help? So it is much cheaper if you buy it as a group. So if any of you are excited about that, maybe you could get something going. All right, let's go through them. So Apana, you would point your hands down, but this is it. Is this Spider-Man? Yeah, right? This is Apana. And again, Apana is that downward moving action. So we probably wouldn't do this with our hands up. We would, yeah, like that, Christian. You got it, Katie? Okay, thank you. Next one, Samana. You would hold this right in front of your navel. And it makes sense when you're doing them. And you cross all your fingers. It doesn't matter left or right on top here, but you extend middle fingers. And it is a stretch on the wrist, so you might have to bring the wrists apart. And you hold that, and I'll kind of angle it here. You hold that in front of the belly if you want to strengthen Samana, which makes sense, right? You good, Katie? Okay. And so these could be added to a theme of any class. What do we have next? Oh, we have prana. This is prana. How intuitive were the hippies? Or was Richard Nixon intuitive? I don't know. I don't think that fits, does it? Okay. Udana. This one.
Can you do that one again?
Sure. Yeah.
Hang on.
Everyone do this one with me. This is prana. Got it, Katie? Thank you so much for doing that. Udana. Okay, you wrap your hands. This one, the right thumb is on top. That's the only one where I'm going to give you where it's that way. You wrap all of your fingers and then you just stick your thumb up. And you just hold this one where it's comfortable. I mean, you could do it right up here, but your arms might get tired, so it's okay to hold it lower. This is Udana. This will help to subtly strengthen that one. Did you get that?
Can you lift that one more time? Thank you.
I keep talking and moving. I'm sorry. Do you switch thumbs? Nope. This one's always left thumb up. Got it. Okay. And then last one is your disco fingers. This is Viana. It's like your little laser beams. Pew, pew, pew. And I think, again, you can have your hands anywhere, but it makes more sense, right, to do it in a way that's more, I can't demo it, but where there's just more expansion happening. Did you get that one, Katie? I'm going to be making the weirdest faces in these screenshots, and I apologize. in the last minute of class, I'm using it to apologize. So those are just fun ways you can bring mudra into your classes. You can weave a theme around it. And just by focusing, so if apana is your theme, you can still teach this sequence, but you focus on grounding. And it's going to give it a very different feel than if you focus on udana, lifting up, right? It's 2 o'clock. That's all I got for you. It's your Sunday afternoon. You get out a little early today, right? Am I telling the truth? I'm not letting you out half an hour early on accident, am I? You would tell me, wouldn't you? You would not tell me. Okay. Thank you so much. I apologize that I had to rush that last little bit. If you have any questions on it, follow up on Classroom, or if you tag me on Facebook, I'll see it. But thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon. Enjoy this October. It's amazing. Bye.
Can I do something with the class really quick before everybody leaves? This is Jasper, and I got her yesterday. So I just wanted to let y'all know, since I told y'all I might be picking one up. And
She is so cute.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I'm so glad I was here for that. I sometimes miss all the good stuff. It always happens chakra nights. Yay. Thank you.
That's all. Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye, everyone. Take care.